if you're under 550, you're getting a 2-bed, 1-bath here. Right. It's insane how, like, I have a friend in Oklahoma, and I was talking to him about, like, hey, you should move out here. And he was like, bro, I can get like a mansion for $550 in Tulsa. He was like, why would I want to move there and like live in like a condo, a 1-bed, 1-bath condo?
Yeah, that's probably been the biggest thing that I've noticed is like now that you're trying to move to Salt Lake City, I'm trying to move back. I looked around and I was like, wow, houses really appreciated up here.
Dude, even since you left.
Like even in the last like 5-6 months, I was like, whoa, like the price has almost doubled. Like that is crazy.
And I think it's gonna get worse. So like people are like, oh, I'm gonna wait for prices to go down. I'm like,
good luck.
I don't know. I don't know if I would risk it on that.
Get in while you fit in. So I guess we have a couple of questions. Like, which one did you like the most? Like, let's look at a couple of these.
Do you want to go in order, or how do you want to do this?
Okay, so a couple of topics that we brought up were like faith. We have like our jobs, our real estate, like our future. I guess personal life. What's the biggest thing in your personal life that you're like trying to overcome right now?
Personal life trying to overcome. I think for me, time. Management of time, because there's so much. I think this is for a lot of people. So many people, especially if you're entrepreneurial, like there's so many things you want to do, such limited time. Like you can get things, you can have all of the dreams and all of the goals in the world, but if you don't know how to manage your time, you're not going to be able to accomplish any of them. So for me, time is like the biggest thing I'm like working through on how to make the most of my time.
How are you managing your time now?
I think I've had to, and it's a lot of talks with my wife, like figuring out what are the things that are most important to us, and really saying like, okay, here's like our top 4 things, and in order, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Let's limit how much time we put into each thing instead of trying to do all of it, and be like, this is first priority, second priority, third priority, fourth. And then also, I'm like a horrible scheduler.
I mean, you made it here on time.
Yeah, that's not normal though. But like I'm a horrible scheduler, and I'm not the most like administrative person. So I've been getting a lot better of like scheduling, all those kind of things. Like even, Michael. So like one of my best friends. Yeah. He this morning I had coffee with him, and he had like a little piece of paper, and he just started doing it. But it was literally like chores for the day, like what your mom does to you, like when you're a little kid, and it's like, take out the trash, do this, and he wrote down all of his chores.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I might try that.
So do you think he like writes it down on like pieces of paper too, or is it just like?
No, it was on paper.
Not just pieces of paper, but like, does he have it like scheduled on?
No, probably not.
Phone? No, it's just like
he does have. I know he does have like a calendar that he follows, but I think also like you're not going to schedule everything. I've tried to do that. It's so hard to like schedule everything in life, such as like take out the trash during this time frame. But it's like things that you need to do throughout the day. So I know that he does do well with his schedule and scheduling, but I think it's also like I might start doing that for like chores and things like that, of like, all right, do this, do that today.
Okay. What do you think are like the most, like the things that would move the needle the most in your life though? Like outside of just scheduling, what things inside of your life? I know in some books, like they call it like rocks and roles, like where you like, like the rock, that's like the big thing that you need to get done and the role that it plays in your life. So maybe like, do you have like a rock and a role that it plays, like the biggest ones?
I don't. For me, one thing that I've been leaning into more though is understanding like my strengths and my weaknesses. Because I've always known this, but the older I get to, the more I'm learning it. Like we're not good at everything in life. Like I don't know what your pros are and like what things you think you do really well, like what your strengths are, but like everyone has weaknesses. And I was talking to, this morning I had a closing, and I was talking to the title lady, and she was saying to me, she was like, do you think you can do what I do? And her name's Chris, she's awesome. And I was like, no, I can't. And she was like, I don't think I can do what you do either. And I was like, I don't know, it's so easy for me, I think you could do it. And she's like, yeah, but this is so easy for me. Right. And it put like back into my mind the idea of, like, for example, I watched you set all this stuff up. It took you 10 minutes. I would have been here for 2.5 hours. Right. Because like we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So when it comes to time management, what I've been learning for me is like what I'm not good at, what my weaknesses are that I've been trying to be Superman and do everything. I need to resource that out and let others do it, and then just like focus on what my strengths are. And if I can focus on what my strengths are, those weaknesses that sometimes drain my time, like they can be done by someone within minutes, that something that would take me hours.
I see. Yeah, like hiring out or like delegating properly to the people that have those proper strengths. Yeah. I think something that I've really, really struggled with, I've never really noticed my strengths like growing up, like in film or being able to talk to others or I don't know, going out and traveling and just being like the ability to just be on the go all the time. Those things seem so inherent that I didn't see them as strengths, and so I would neglect them very heavily. And I think now it was more of like now I'm discovering like, oh, this was so in my face that I couldn't even see it. Like cameras have always been around my house. I've always been filming. I've always loved editing. I've always loved narrating and speaking, and I have no skills. Like everyone does that, but when you realize like all of those things are yours, things that are happening in your life are yours, I was like, oh, that's insane.
That's exactly it too. Like I think that's exactly how it goes, because I was the same way. Like my wife, for example, she's like, you can speak. I'm like, anyone can speak. And it's like, no, that's the biggest fear. And I'm like, no, it's not. But it's like when it comes so naturally to you, you forget that like it's something special that you have. It's a strength that you have, and not everyone can do that.
Right.
But then it's especially if it's something that you do well at or do well with, it's very easy to never see it as a strength.
Right.
And then you just think like, oh, I just have these weaknesses, and then you don't know what to focus your time in because you don't really understand how special you are and what you have that's a gift.
How would you describe your first time finding out that your strengths were your strengths?
I think for me, it's been like the last year, to be honest. It's really recent that I've started to like notice those things and like really lean into it more. It's been the last year as I've stepped out, and like within the last less than 2 years, I've started 2 new things. I started real estate and then started the church. And they're both things that just one of them on its own is a big thing to do.
Right.
And I did both of them. And as I started to like see from really people around me really speaking into me, being like, wow, you're so good at this. And I'm like, really? And they're like, wow, how did you do both of these? How did you do just one of them? And then I start to realize like, oh my gosh, like there's some things that I'm really good at, but I've also noticed in those things, all I focused on was what I wasn't good at. So I was like, oh, the church, like I'm not an administrator, so that stinks. Real estate, I'm not super organized, so that stinks. And I've just like, I harped on like the things I wasn't good at.
Right.
And over the last few months, as people speak into me, I really have been able to lean in and be like, oh wow, this actually isn't something everybody can do. And I thought everyone could.
Right.
And it's like you start to learn those unique things.
I think that's where I started learning like delegation.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the biggest part, was I realized like me too, like not very organized. And so I learned to like delegate that out to either like an application or another person reminding me, or finding extremely powerful team members that are like really aptitude to being like there all the time, like ready, let's go, let's do this, so that I can create the biggest vision and get it done.
Yeah.
And so I think realizing that, and like it's not your fault if it all falls apart, it's your fault that you didn't know your weaknesses, but there are people out there that will suffice those. Like your negative has a positive out there.
That's right.
And so if you keep like looking at the negatives and then finding other negatives to try to fill it, it's always going to be like that uphill battle. But realizing that my negative traits are someone's positive traits and we build a powerful team has been like outstanding for me, at least.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I was talking to a leader about this like a week ago, and he was giving me a different perspective. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
He was saying that the things that we aren't good at, our weaknesses, we should spend more time in to try to do better in those areas. I'm not a fan of that because that sounds horrible to me, but it was an interesting idea. And in your space, I don't know how that works or if that's even possible.
Like, I think that within my life, I always try definitely to focus on things that I'm bad at, but I see those things as habits that I would stack onto. So if I'm not good at something, I don't necessarily go, oh my god, this is like the fastest runner on the face of the planet, and then there's me, I can't run at all. I see like how important is it to me to actually do. Sometimes it could be for health, it could be for like your job. Like, is it really going to benefit me in the long term? For example, let's say now I started cutting my own hair and playing the guitar, and what else did I start doing on my own?
Wait, you started cutting your own hair?
I started cutting my own hair, and I found it brought me a lot of self-confidence, and in that I was able to see that throughout my entire life and other habits and skills and interactions. Like, I feel so proud of myself now. I have like all this self-confidence, and so therefore it is worth my time. But if someone told me like to be the best grass cutter with, I don't know, scissors, I mean, like, I don't know how confident that's gonna make me or how far that's gonna take me in my life. So it really does come down to like, what is it that you're actually working on that you're bad at? Like, some people might say that I'm not the best at staying in one location for prolonged periods of time. That's probably one of the big ones. And it's like, okay, let's say I stayed in one location for a prolonged period of time. I think that would reduce my income. That would reduce my experiences with others. That would probably, it would kill all the other aspects of my life. It would reduce my creativity. That's just not me. So I think there are benefits to that. Of course, like your consistency levels of just sitting down in one location. But for me, it's not something that, one, I really want to do with my life. And two, if I did, it would just reduce the amount of creativity that I had. And I did it before.
Interesting,
so, there's that aspect to it.
No, that makes sense. That's a great way to put it, actually. It makes sense, and I think that's a great way to look at it too, because I'm even just thinking of all the things of, like, when I heard that last week, I was like, that's dumb, no. But now that I'm hearing you talk about it in that way, I think I see the different perspective now of, like, I think the things that you aren't good at, I think you just have to look and see how does it value in the long term if you were to turn those weaknesses into strengths, or just weaknesses into average, I guess.
Weaknesses into average. It's like a day-by-day thing. Like, I was terrible in the beginning of the year at like sitting down and just getting the camera work done. But once I sat down, I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna just film for like 2 seconds every single day and then move on. Eventually now I can produce upwards of like 7 to 10 to 20 videos per day, and it just feels pretty natural.
Jeez.
But I wasn't really good at that because I didn't have the skill of consistency. So I think that's different than like the filming aspect. It was just a consistency thing. And once I did that, now it's just like, oh, film, and the opportunities that fall online. But it was like a day-by-day thing of just doing it for like literally a minute.
Wow.
Whatever it was that I filmed, just that little bit. And then it became a habit.
Dang. That's impressive. I would never have thought that.
Yeah.
But then that's good too, because you were looking deeper at what the actual issue was the consistency thing. Not that you couldn't do film, or not that you couldn't produce a video. It was the consistency of like doing it over and over and over again.
Because I saw it as like it was getting in the way of all my friends. Like the limiting belief that I had with film was that if I carry a camera around, I'm gonna have to stop the party so that we can film and have some sort of structured event, and it's gonna hold back my friendships, and it's just not gonna work. It's gonna hold me back. And I mean, that's the truth. If it takes you 5 to 6 hours, like if this took me, I don't know, 3 hours to set up, like maybe it would hinder the friendship. But when I take it day by day and I just film a little bit, and learn a little bit more, then it becomes like a really big like help.
Interesting. No, that's good. Yeah. I love it.
That's always been my thing. You want to talk about faith?
Let's do it.
So curious about your faith in the church, and how did you get moved to start the church?
Yeah, it was. So we started the church almost 2 years ago now. It was actually about 2 years ago, like this time period right here that we're filming, that we heard, and like we really felt like the Lord was like calling us to start the church. And what that looks like for us, it wasn't like I got a cell phone call from God and I like answered it, but it was just like in our heart, like we had this like stirring of faith of like you can do it, go do it. And it was something that we always knew would happen someday. We had no idea what would happen that day, or even like this still. Like I don't even know if I expected it before being 40. Like I thought it would be like way in the future. I knew that there was going to be a day, but I thought it would be way in the future. And the Lord just like called us to it, and we were like, okay, well, now's the time. And we were just like praying through, should we go back to Florida, which is where we're from? Should we go to Texas? Should we go to, I always thought like Phoenix would be a awesome place to start a church someday. We prayed through like all kinds of different areas, all kinds of different locations. And we just felt like this peace in our heart, and the Lord was like saying, just do it here. And we were like, because we didn't really want to be here.
That's fair.
But we're like, and
when you say prayer, what does that mean to you? Like, what is the action of prayer? Is it an action? Is it
yeah, for me, what it looks like, and it's usually, it's really weird, and I always teach this even in our church. I always tell people to have like some kind of sacred place to you of like where you pray consistently. I think it just creates a atmosphere for me, and my wife will tell you this is true. I have two places. One, as weird as it sounds, it's in the shower.
Okay.
Like, and so I take these long showers, like literally, I take like these 45-minute showers sometimes, but it's because I'm just sitting there praying. I'm just talking to God, as weird as that sounds. But then the second place is in my car. So like people hate this because I don't listen to music. I know no music that's out, and it's because in my car, like that's usually where you listen to music, right? Like when you're driving or when you're in the car. When I'm in my car 4 hours a day. It's silent, like literally, it's just silent. Sometimes a podcast, but 85% of the time it's silent. And it's because that's like my space where I just sit and I pray and I talk to God, and I just like talk for a bit, and I'll just sit there in silence and just listen while I'm driving. And so for me, that's what it looks like. Prayer looks different for everyone's different.
It's very weird that you say that, because I literally don't listen to music in my car either.
Really?
It's either an audiobook or silence.
Really?
The music, I feel like.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy, because everyone thinks I'm wild for saying that.
I was like, huh, I guess that's where we connect, probably. Yeah, I literally don't listen to music in the car, so I can either be completely silent or listen to audiobooks on different whatevers. Like a lot of it's like faith-based or esoteric knowledge or whatever it may be. A lot of it has to do with what it means to be in this world and like connect to your intuition and all of that. But like I'm driving between Salt Lake City and Vegas all the time, so I'm driving, like I've been in the car maybe this week 40 plus hours.
Oh my gosh, and it's silent.
So it's either silent or
book.
audiobooks. Yeah. And
that's like me. Like I probably drive, if I'm thinking, I'm probably in my car like 3 to 4 hours a day, which it's not 40 hours a week, but like let's just say 25 hours a week ish. Like it's most of the time it's silent, but that's become like my prayer space.
Okay.
And so like it's like a sacred place to me where I pray, and then obviously I pray like home and here and there, but I mean 4 hours a day is a lot of time to pray. I don't think I pray all 4 hours, but like I probably, if I just prayed half of the time, like that's 2 hours. And so yeah, that's just where I do that, and obviously I pray outside of that, but that's like become like a sacred place for me to just talk to God and just like sit and listen. So,
you know, one thing that I've really noticed about faith and I think like spiritual connection, like I think there's like the spiritual groups and then there's faith. They use a lot of words that are synonymous, but I don't think a lot of people understand that they're synonymous. Like prayer and like meditation kind of being the same thing, or like God speaking to you, and intuition. Me personally, I see it as like God, because it's always for me been God, but it's really just like an open space where you can grab intuition and that being the voice of God, which I've always found so interesting to see like all of the similarities, but just like a little bit of the disconnect because of I think some people have like different histories with like church and faith, and that's okay, but I like to like open people up to the idea of faith, and some people that are maybe more disconnected from the idea of the word God or the word of God, to like come in and be like, hey, like these are the same things that are happening in your life, but they really are synonymous, and these practices can really help you.
And as much as I, like for me, prayer is all about, I mean, this is just obviously my idea of faith, and I'm sure you have people that are watching that have all kinds of different faith backgrounds, but like for me, with my faith, it's very much, it's about communication. And I think people think a lot of times prayer, and it's just like talk. Like more than half of the time, my prayer time with God, I'm not saying a single word. I'm just sitting and listening to like what he wants to say and what he wants to speak. And so I get what you're saying, because I think sometimes people think prayer and it's like, oh God, God, come down right now. And like, as much as I may have those moments,
yeah, those are real moments.
Yeah, those are real moments. Like, a lot of time it's me just like saying, Lord, like, I just want to hear what you have to say to me today. And like, that's my prayer for the day. And then I sit for 2 hours and I just listen to what he wants to say to me that day. Because prayer, it's communication. And like, when I'm out on a date with my wife, I don't just talk the whole time. I listen. In the same way, like with God, that's what prayer is. It's communication. And so, you know, as much as you want to talk to God 24/7, it's good to also just like pause and meditate. We'll use that word, and like meditate and listen. Like, what does the Lord want to speak to you?
Yeah.
So,
I think the other thing is I realize maybe some people want to have like a conversation with God, but they're only looking for like physical words, or they're only looking for some sort of thing. But I think that God speaks to me, at least, through everything. It could be something that you said in this conversation. It could be like a road sign. It could be in the rustle of the wind. It could be, I was thinking about, I had a dream where my friend, tragic accident in a Subaru, and I had thought about this like months later, where it just popped into my mind, and I saw that same white Subaru pass by me, and I was like, ooh, yeah, I should probably mention that to him. And then like we were able to avoid him getting in many white Subarus going in a specific direction in Big Fork, and I was like, those intuitions have always come to me. And one of them was, I was in Reno at some point living with a couple of friends, and the dream was I'm going to knock on doors, find an RV, and then move across the country and fall in love. And that exact scenario happened in real life. Like, word for word, I drove down to Las Vegas, knocked on doors, found an RV, moved to Salt Lake City, eventually fell in love, and then like that kind of...
Found an RV?
Found an RV.
Like, someone just gave you an RV?
So this was like a $20,000 to $30,000 RV, and they sold it to me for like $10,000.
Dang.
So things like that would happen constantly. It was always like a dream, hey, this is like the roadmap. And I was like, okay, cool. And I would just follow this like testament. So for me, it was a lot of dreams.
Okay.
Now I'm starting to see more of it being like in the external world and in my mind and random thoughts, and connecting them to the physical world, which is really, really cool actually.
Yeah.
Being more open to different interpretations of how I'm getting spoken to.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I mean, and God speaks in all kinds of different ways. There's people in our church, people that I know personally, that they're very much in tune, and like God speaks to them through dreams and words of prophecy and different ways like that. I that's not me, but like everyone's different, and that's, once again, even going back to like strengths and weaknesses, right? Like even in the body of Christ, like it talks about like some of us are the arms, some of us are the fingers, the nose, the arms, the everything, legs. We all have different parts, and I think all of it plays a role to some degree. And so like that's your role in the body, of like being able to, whether it's you're telling your friend not to go in a white Subaru or whatever it may be, you know? So, yeah, that's cool.
Where do you see the church in like 3 to 5 years?
Church as like the big, like the church?
I guess the building, not the body.
So this church?
Yes, the building, the church, or your body. Because, I mean, the church is like the body of the people, right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you meant like the big C church, like meaning like the Christian church, like across the globe, or like move church, like the physical thing. To be honest, I don't know. I'm very much, and I've want to say this is one of the things I've been learning the last year. I've very much been like, I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do what the Lord speaks and let Him do whatever He wants. Of course, the easy answer would be like, I hope it's growing. I hope people are coming to the Lord, which I know is happening, will continue to happen. But I very much tried to take my earthly expectations out of the equation, and very much say, I'm going to be obedient to what you want me to do, to what you want us to do as a church, and whatever plays out is going to play out. And early on in the church, I very much tried to answer that question and very much control with my human nature how things would go. And the church was very quickly failing. And I immediately stepped back, and I was with Abby. We left our first Christmas service, so we had been October, November. We were about 4 months into the church, and our Christmas service, I'm not exaggerating, I think like 6 people went. Wow. And it's like, Christmas, everyone goes to church. We had like 6 people, and 2 of them were new, and they ended up going to a different church. I still talk to them, but they're at a different church. They didn't even want to stay because it was like so weird. It was like there's like 6 of us, and we were like holding candles and like, yay. But at that time, I was very much like controlling. And so I remember that night we went on a plane, literally like church ended. We went straight to the airport. We hopped on a plane and I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And she was like, we just started.
We just got it.
She's like, we started like in August. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I could do it. And in that moment, like throughout that trip, like the Lord really spoke to me again, talking about like this word prayer, like, Lord, speak to me, I need to hear from you. Mm-hmm. And it was very much like the idea of what I said, like, I don't want to do this anymore. It became very clear, like, yeah, I don't want to do this the way I've been doing it anymore. Like, I want to do it the way you want us to do it. And my mindset shifted. And when it did, that's when our church started to grow. It was like after that moment where I stopped trying to control everything. So to go back to your question, like, I don't know what the Lord wants to do because I'm not God. But what I can say is in 3 to 5 years, I hope as we continue to be obedient, continue to follow what he wants, something great will happen, whatever that looks like to God.
Mm. I think I completely understand what that means because when it comes in even my own life, I can think about me wanting to control every single aspect of my life or where my life is going to go, and I need to make this hit marker by this time and this way, doing it like this, and if it doesn't happen that way, like, things are bad, right? But and I think in reality what it is I want this to happen in my life, but really I'm going to get the intuition or I'm going to get the message from God of how this is going to play out. This thing that's going to happen in my life is going to come to me 100% in a way that I have no idea how it's going to come. So like any negative thing that happens in my life, it's on purpose. It wasn't an accident. This comes so that I can learn something or see something or find a new opportunity that leads me to my goal. It's like, this is what we hope for, and cool, understanding that I relinquish my tight grasp of trying to control everything and let it be up to God.
Yeah.
And I think that has been phenomenal in my life.
I think that's the way to do it because I think when we get into the idea sometimes of saying in 3 to 5 years, not that it's bad to have goals,
right?
But when we say in 3 to 5 years, like, what do you want? The answer is going to be based around, like, we want it to be successful. And so, like, if I were to ask you a question right now of what success looks like, if you would rather create a movie, like you want to be a filmmaker, if you were able to create a movie that only 2 people watched, but it affected this one person's life in such an incredible way that he went on to become the next president of the United States, or if you had 18 million views and it was one of the most successful movies, but it really just led to a one-watch movie that everyone just went to the movie theater and watched one time, what would you say is more of a success?
I guess the greater success would be like the benefit of having one man become the president impacts the entire world and actually makes a change.
Exactly.
So that's the big thing. But I guess our key performance indicators are not God's key performance indicators.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Like, that's
the point.
Yeah.
Because like we could have this big church full of 10,000 people that come to church on Sunday, but then like go home and do nothing.
Right.
Or like you could have a church of 100 people, but 100 people that are truly so in love with God, so in love with people that they go on to impact the city in an incredible way. And it's like, what's the greater success? Because many people in earthly eyes would be like, oh, 10,000 people, duh.
Yeah.
But then like in God's eyes, it might be like, yeah, 10 people going to make a change in the city and going to like rock this city in such an incredible way. That's more important. So when it comes to like, especially in faith realm of like what success is, it's not really possible to really put like a fingerprint on like what that is.
And what that looks like. Because it's much bigger than what you are. And your gift really does contribute more than you know.